Nature reserve. Reserve means to protect something, right? So here what is being protected? The nature is being protected. There are some wildlife which are endemic only to Galapagos Island, meaning you don't find them anywhere else in the world. So nature reserve is of two types. One is integrals and the other one is partial. The Constitution of India has provided special rules and regulations and laws, especially for the tribal population itself separately. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on Environmental Studies for second semester BBA. I'm Dr. Divya, Environmental Studies faculty, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So in today's session, let us continue with Unit 6, that is Environmental Policies and Practices. So under this unit, this is the last session wherein we'll study about the nature reserves and the different types of nature reserves that are there, and also we shall study about the conflict between the human and wildlife, especially with India as a reference. So here, what is nature reserve? So nature reserve. Reserve means to protect something, right? So here what is being protected? The nature is being protected. So a nature reserve is a protected area which is of great importance for flora, that is plants, for fauna, animals, or for features of geological or other special interest. So anything that you need to study about nature or the earth, you can do it in this particular nature reserve. And it is reserved and managed for purposes, especially for conservation purpose and to provide special opportunities for study or for research purposes. So this is the definition of nature reserve. So therefore, a nature reserve is a protected area of importance of flora and fauna or features of geological or other special interest which is reserved and managed for a particular purpose such as conservation as well as to provide opportunities for study as well as research. So next, talking about the types of nature reserve. So nature reserve is of two types. One is integrals and the other one is partial. So talking about integral nature reserve. So integral nature reserve means it is that area is completely restricted. Apart from using that particular area only for research or study purpose, other human interventions like going for a safari, all that activity is prohibited here. So therefore, integral nature reserves are those nature reserves or protected areas in which all types of resources, exploitation or economic activity are prohibited. The people or the public are not allowed into these areas or these integral nature reserves except those people who have the authority, that is the forest officials, that is those authorized for scientific or research purpose can enter into that particular nature reserve. Apart from that, no other public is allowed or no other recreational activities is allowed in the integral nature reserve. Next, talking about the partial nature reserve. So partial nature reserve are those in which exploitation of certain resources is allowed. Say for example, the tribes can make use of those the resources available in the forest for manufacturing certain goods. Recreational activities to some extent in a limit can be carried out here. Safaris and all that can occur in this particular place. So people are allowed, but that too with great rules and regulations. So those in which the exploitation of certain resources is allowed as long as it is done in accordance with the prevailing ecological conservation standards. So there are some laws, rules and regulations framed according to the ecological conservation standards. If until and when people follow this particular rules and regulations, then all these some parts of the activities are allowed here, but complete exploitation is not allowed. So that is partial nature reserve. So Now you have understood the difference between integral nature reserve and partial nature reserve, right? So integral nature reserve means complete exploitation, usage of the nature reserve is completely prohibited. No public is allowed there. Only authorities who are doing research and study purpose can enter into that particular area. In partial means a little bit of activities can occur these particular nature reserves, that too with the boundary or with the limits of the rules and the regulations. So this is about the types of nature reserve. Next, let's talk about the importance of nature reserves. So the most important feature of nature reserve is to conserve the wild animals and the plants. Therefore, to protect animals and plants in order to encourage biodiversity, that is ecological diversity, species diversity, as well as genetic diversity, and to provide outdoor recreation, that is nature reserves can provide recreation facilities, such as some of the nature reserves have stays wherein people can go and stay there, enjoy the nature, wherein they are taken for safaris, wherein they can directly interact with the wildlife. So all that too under limitations, rules and regulations is done under the nature reserve, that is it can provide outdoor recreation or fun activities. And nature reserves actually, since it protects a large number of the plants or a large area of the forest, it can keep the environment clean, or in other terms we can say it can purify the air. So it creates cleaner air. Next is it prevents the cultural heritage. So there are many monuments or many abandoned monuments that are there in some of the nature reserves, which are protected as cultural heritages. Like there are some sacred groves which are there in the nature reserves which are protected. Even the culture of the tribes can also be protected because of the nature reserves. And not just that, it provides knowledge and value also. Knowledge means we get to learn a lot about the animals and the plants in their natural habitat itself, so that we will, instead of just sitting and reading a book, when we have a live interaction, it is always something different, right? So it provides knowledge and also it provides a lot of value, especially in terms of economy, because the tribals will create a lot of products using the forest resources, that too in limit, and these can be sold out or exported to other regions, increasing the economic value of the country also. And also it protects the indigenous people's land rights. So indigenous people means those tribes who are living in that particular area. So they are given some land rights there. You'll study about that later. So those land rights are protected because of the nature reserves, which are nothing but the protected area. So the tribals' land rights can also be protected. And it preserves the natural genetic diversity. That is here because no human intervention occurs here. No animal is brought to the captive breeding center or nothing takes place. Everything is under nature itself in a natural way. The genetic diversity can be maintained on a larger scale under the nature reserve. So these are the importance or benefits of nature reserves. Next, let's talk about some of the famous nature reserves. So some of the famous nature reserves, here I have listed a few. One is Yellowstone National Park. So Yellowstone National Park, it covers an area of 3,500 square mile, and it is a natural park that sits on top of a dormant volcano. So whenever there is a volcanic eruption, there is always space for the generation of new types of plants and new types of animals there, because the entire biome itself gets altered because of volcanic eruption. So Yellowstone National Park is situated on a dormant volcano, and it houses a lot of different species, bacterial species and all that, which you don't find anywhere else in the world. Next important nature reserve is Banff, that is in Canada. So Banff National Park is the oldest national park that is present in Canada. It is the oldest in Canada, and it includes the Canadian Rocky Mountains. And Banff National Park, it offers a good recreational site for the people. So this is a partial nature reserve. Why? Because here people are allowed to visit, wherein they can go in for bird watching, they can go in for hiking, water sports, fishing and climbing, all that are allowed. So therefore this is a best example for a partial nature reserve. Next is the Galapagos Island. Galapagos Island is actually very famous. Why? Because Darwin actually visited this particular island and it is famous for a particular tortoise, Galapagos tortoise. So there is a story behind this tortoise actually. Now the tortoise is not there, it's extinct. So what happened to the tortoise was, so Galapagos Island, there were tortoises there, or turtles, which could live for hundreds of years. But what happened was, earlier people were much interested in going on voyages and all that. So likewise, when a group of people visited the island for voyage, they thought that this island is quite suitable for inhabiting or for living. So they started living there, and this next time what they did was they brought goats to that particular island. So those goats started feeding on those grasses and the grass population completely reduced. Now the turtles that were there, that is the Galapagos turtles that were there, they did not get grasses because almost all the grasses were finished off by the goats, because we know that these goats, cattle and all that, once they start eating, it is a continuous process, they'll never stop, right? So that is why, because of the unavailability of grasses, the Galapagos tortoise completely became extinct. So this was actually found out by Darwin, that is the process of evolution and all that. A lot of stories are there behind these Galapagos Islands. So this is an archipelago which is present in the Ecuador, and it offers the chance to see wildlife that appears nowhere else on the earth. So there are some wildlife which are endemic only to Galapagos Island, meaning you don't find them anywhere else in the world. And this is one island that is protected under the UNESCO World Heritage status. And the land and waters of Galapagos Island became a national park in 1959. Therefore, now it is a partial nature reserve. Next important nature reserve is Białowieża National Park. So this national park is situated in Poland, and it has a large population of European bison, which you don't find in other parts of the region. And here in this particular national park, the trees here have been growing since many years. That is, they have been growing for more than 500 years, and therefore because some of the oldest trees are present in this particular national park, the national park is protected since 1921, making it one of the oldest national park in the world. So therefore, Białowieża National Park, since it was protected since 1921 itself, there are some trees which are still there in that national park, and they have been living there for since 500 years. Some of the oldest trees are found in this particular national park. So therefore, Białowieża National Park is the oldest national park in the world. Next is Atsinanana in Madagascar. So this national park, that is Atsinanana, which is there in Madagascar, it is a rainforest, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And in this particular region, that is Atsinanana Nature Reserve, Madagascar, within that region itself, it has about 6 national parks. And the rainforest, because it is entirely made up of rainforest, the national park has unique biodiversity, wherein you find different types of plants and animal species that have evolved there and formed into new forms of species which you don't find anywhere else in the world. Because I told you, rainforest, Western Ghats is also rainforest, right? Their evolution takes place to so much extent that there are still some plants and animals which are yet to be discovered and named because of evolution process. And here it is famous for lemurs and primates, that is the monkeys, apes and all that, which are found in this particular region, and they are considered endangered because they are at the verge of extinction. And there are also other rare species in this particular rainforest that actually needs protection. So a lot of endangered species are found in this rainforest, that is in Madagascar rainforest. Next is the Northeast Greenland National Park. So it is the largest protected landmass on earth, and most of the park contains ice sheet, because Greenland is always filled with snow caps and glaciers and ice sheets and all that. So therefore half of the park is almost covered with ice sheets, and therefore it is home for polar bears, walrus, Arctic foxes, seals, narwhals and whales. So these are the animals which inhabit in this particular nature reserve. So these are some of the nature reserves. So apart from that, there is also one more nature reserve which is called as Papahānauwa Makoakia Marine National Park, and this national park is considered as a national monument, and it spreads over an area of 5,83,000 square miles of ocean. And in that ocean, so this national park, it is a marine national park, therefore it is the ocean, that is ocean having a kilometer or a spread of 5,83,000 square miles. And in this particular ocean, around 10 islands are situated, and that is the Hawaiian Islands are the most, which we call as the Hawaiian Islands. And these islands, 10 islands, are the biggest protected marine areas in the world, and it was safeguarded especially because of its natural and cultural sites. So here a lot of organisms are there, like coral reefs. Coral reefs are the home for thousands to thousand varieties of organisms which are not still discovered. So it has amazing coral reefs, it has green turtles, it has endangered monk seals, and it has about 14 million birds in this particular region. Imagine 14 million birds in this particular region. Therefore, it is one of the important national or nature reserve, and it is called as a national monument because as it is protected. No changes has been made there. Next is the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. So the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, it spreads over a kilometer of 2,300, and it consists of thousands of coral reefs. So Great Barrier Reef is actually the largest coral reef that is present in the whole world, and therefore it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site since the year 1981, and no human intervention is allowed in this particular region. Of course, people can go and visit some of the parts of the coral reef and all that, but since then it has been protected as a nature reserve. Next is the Serengeti National Park, which is present in Tanzania. So Tanzania means it's in Africa. So this is the protected area of Africa, and this area or this nature reserve is very famous because a lot of migratory animals come here. Every year there is migration of wild beast and zebra, and this particular national park is home to a particular group of tribal people called as the Masai Mara. So these are the tribal people who have been living in this particular national park of Tanzania since many years, and therefore the Serengeti National Park has grade 2 listed UNESCO status. So it is listed under the grade 2 UNESCO status. So therefore it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site as well. So these are some of the famous nature reserves that are there. So in some of these nature reserves, human activities are allowed, but in some only research activities are allowed. Next, let's talk about the tribal population. So tribal population, it is estimated that there are about 476 indigenous people or tribes throughout the world. So throughout the world, there are 476 million tribal people, and the scheduled tribe population is 104.2 million, which is actually 8.6% of the total population of India. So in India, the scheduled tribe population is 104.2 million, when compared to, that is 8.6% of the total population of India. So this was according to the census that was taken in 2011. So there are some states wherein most of the tribes are situated in India, that is Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Orissa, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, then there is West Bengal and Karnataka. So these are some of the states which is having the largest tribal population in India. So next, talking about the tribal rights. So the Constitution of India has provided some special provisions for the tribal people, because tribal people are the ones who are most exploited because they don't know the knowledge of the world. So that is the reason. So in order to safeguard the interest of these tribal people, the Constitution of India has provided special rules and regulations and laws, especially for the tribal population itself separately. So the Article 15 that is there in the Indian Constitution, it states that any state should not discriminate any citizen on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. So this explains that every citizen in India is treated equally and they have to be given equal rights and opportunities, no matter whatever religion, caste or background they belong to. So that is what it states in the Article 15. So Article 15 is one of the important article which frames some rules and regulations for the tribal population. Government of India has also made reservation for the tribes, especially in employment, under Article 16(4) of the Constitution of India. So special rights have been given to them, especially in terms of employment, wherein certain percentage of employees in a particular institute or a company or wherever, it should go to the tribal population. Otherwise, will people accept tribal people? No, right? So that is because the way of living, everything is different from other people. So that is why, to avoid discrimination, such rules have been made. The Government of India has also reserved seats in the House of People. That is, they have some reserved seats in the Lok Sabha and also in the state legislative assemblies under the Article 330 and 332 of the Constitution of India, wherein those seats are reserved only for the tribal people. So whatever MLAs, MCs or whatever political activities are there, for that the tribal people should also be included. Next, Article 19(5) of the Constitution of India, it guarantees the tribal people the right to own their own property and enjoy it in any part of the country. So land rights, we had spoken about land rights in the previous slides, right? So how land rights are given to them. So they don't have properties like other people. Forest is only their property. So they have been given their own rights to own property and they can enjoy these rights in any part of the country. Next, Article 338 of the Constitution of India, it grants the right to appoint a commissioner to look after the welfare activities of the tribes. So in India, a special commissioner has been appointed whose main work is to look after the tribes, their rules, their regulations, their rights and all that. Next, Article 46 of the Constitution of India states that the state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interest of the weaker sections of the people, that is the tribal people, and in particular the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes, and shall protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. So tribal people, as I told you, they don't have much knowledge about the outside world. So they are subjected to a lot of injustice. So separate rules and regulations have been made so that these people are given proper justice. Next, under Article 275 of the Constitution of India, the central government is required to grant in aid to the state government for approved tribal welfare schemes. So the state government goes to the central government taking any scheme which is meant for the welfare or upbringing of the tribal community, then the central government are not supposed to put down those schemes, and they are supposed to provide grants in the form of money to the state government so that it can be used for the welfare of the tribal people. Next is the Schedule 5 of the Constitution of India and other state laws. It prohibits the transfer of property belonging to the tribal community or the land which is being cultivated by these people for a long time. Because I told you the tribal people are quite innocent, what will the other people of the higher communities do? They will just brainwash them and they'll just give them very little money for the property, and they will buy the property from them either by paying them very less money or by hook or crook. They will try to buy the property from them because the tribal people will not have much knowledge. So that is why Schedule 5 of the Constitution of India has made a law wherein the tribal people owning a piece of land or a property cannot transfer the property or their agricultural land to any of the people for a long time. So this is the rule that they have made. And the point 11 of the 20-point program. So there was a 20-point program that was done in order to protect the rights of the tribal people. In that, the point 11, it actually provides economic assistance or economic help to the scheduled tribe families so that they can improve their economic life and they can rise above the poverty line. So scholarships will be provided to the children, or some subsidies will be provided to them. So in terms of money, help is done by the government. They can improve their lifestyle and come above the poverty line. And the Scheduled Tribe and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act, which came into existence in 2006. So in 2006, there was a law that was actually put forth for the tribal people, which is called as the Scheduled Tribe and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act in the year 2006. It recognizes the ownership rights of the tribes and also the other forest dwellers who are living or cultivating a specific land for a very long period of time. So those who have been depending on a specific piece of land or owning a property since a long period of time, some separate rules and regulations have been framed so that these properties do not go from these tribal peoples into the wrong hands because of the exploitation. So that act was nothing but Scheduled Tribe and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act. So this was about the tribal rights. So next let's talk about the human-wildlife conflict in Indian context. So India has the world's second largest human population, as well as it has large populations of tigers, Asian elephants, the one-horned rhinoceros, the Asiatic lions, and other species of animals, which often leads to a conflict between these animals and human beings, because human beings, we are greedy, and as and when the population increases, we are not satisfied with whatever space we have. We try to conquer the forest also, therefore, and that is the reason why animals start entering into human dwellings. So the data from the Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, it indicates that 500 elephants were killed between the year 2014 to 2015 and 2018 to 2019, mainly because of conflict between the human and the elephant. And during the same period, 2,361 people were killed because of conflict with the elephant. So that is what the census or the data collected by the Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change states. That is, 500 elephants were killed between 2014 and 2015, and 2018 and 2019 also 500 elephants were killed. But apart from that, people also lost their life. That is 2,361 people were killed because of the elephants. So talking about human-wildlife conflict, what is exactly human-wildlife conflict? So human-wildlife conflict refers to struggles that arise when the presence or behavior of wildlife poses actual or perceived direct recurring threats to the human population or needs of the human beings, often leading to disagreement between the groups of people and therefore causing a negative impact on the people or on the wildlife. So any activity that impacts the life of the people as well as wildlife can be called as human wildlife conflict. So talking about the causes of human wildlife conflict. One is lack of protected area. People have started expanding their area into the forest, and therefore the protected area size has been decreasing drastically, and therefore the animals will have nowhere to go. They'll obviously have to come into human settlements. So therefore lack of protected area is one of the causes. Next is urbanization. As and when the population increases, the need for infrastructure also increases. The rural areas starts to urbanize. Therefore, there is a need for lot of space. Therefore, they'll start cutting down trees in the forest and converting them into urban lands. Therefore, urbanization is also one of the causes for human-wildlife conflict. Next is because of transport network. As and when the population increases, the need for transport also increases. That is construction of roads, construction of bridges, railways, all that increases. So all these construction causes fragmentation of the forest, therefore leading to, or habitat fragmentation, therefore leading to human-wildlife conflict. So what is habitat fragmentation? All that we have already done it in the previous sessions of few of the units. So you can go back and have a look at it. So also because of increasing human population, whatever it is, for all the reasons, increasing human population is only one of the major reason here. Next is because of illegal grass collection and poaching. So illegal grass collection in order to feed the livestock, and also poaching animals for recreational purpose and to make articrafts out of the tusks or the horns that are got from the animals, and also for medicinal purpose also. So all this also has led to human wildlife conflict. Next is overgrazing by livestock. So livestock in some of the villages which shares a boundary with the forest, they just leave their animals to enter into the forest. So if these animals continuously starts feeding on the grasses or the herbaceous plants that are there, then there will be scarcity of food for the herbivorous animals. Therefore, the herbivorous population will come to a decline, and there will be a scarcity of food for the carnivores, and the carnivores population will start to decline. Therefore, the carnivores will not have any option other than to enter into human settlements. So therefore, overgrazing by livestock is also one of the reasons. And next is deforestation is one of the important reasons. Here in cities also you can find here and there monkeys which are creating a havoc to the people, right, wherein they start entering into the house, creating problems to the people. And there are many incidents. Recently there was an incident wherein a monkey had thrown a 4-year-old baby from the balcony. So who is to blame? Are we supposed to blame the authorities? Are we supposed to blame the people? Or are we supposed to blame the monkeys? It's not the fault of the monkeys, of course, because we have been encroaching their areas. Then obviously they'll have no space, no food, they'll come into the human settlements. So that is how deforestation or cutting of trees has also led to a decrease in the forest areas, that is area of the forest, and therefore the animal starts to enter into villages and cities. So these are some of the causes of human wildlife conflict. Next, let's look into, in India, what are the initiatives that have been taken by the government to minimize or prevent human wildlife conflict. So advisory for management of human wildlife conflict. So HWC is human wildlife conflict. So advisory for management of human wildlife conflict issued by the Standing Committee of National Board of Wildlife. So they have a management committee that is separately set to advise people so that they can avoid conflict between the humans and the wildlife, and empower gram panchayats in dealing with problematic wild animals as per the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, it's mainly meant to safeguard the wild animals. So here the Gram Panchayat should talk to the people, they should assure them and make sure that these wild animals are captured and safely sent back to their habitat instead of letting the people take the role and directly killing these particular animals. And also provide insurance under the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana for crop compensation. So if there is flood, if there is drought, and if there is any insect attack, pathogen attack and all that, and if it causes a loss to the farmers, then the farmers can claim insurance under the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So same way, they should be given insurance under this particular yojana for the damage that is caused by the wildlife also. So when insurance is given, people will also be happy. They will not try to kill the particular wildlife. Otherwise, what will happen? They will get frustrated because year around they would have grown the crop, and finally an animal enters into the particular crop area and then destroys the crop. It is frustrating to the farmers because it incurs a huge economic loss to him, right? So instead of that, if you give insurance for that, then the problem of human wildlife conflict can be minimized to certain extent. So that also was done by the government. Next is increasing fodder and water sources within the forest areas. So during summers, animals come into the villages or the human settlements in search of water and food. So instead, increase the number of water holes in the forest itself and increase the availability of food source in the forest itself, then these animals will not enter into villages. So that is why, if you remember, there was a time when the tribal people were not allowed to collect bamboo shoots from the forest. So bamboo shoots are actually a tasty delicacy which is available during the rainy season, but because of unexploitation or unlimited collection of the bamboo shoots, the elephants did not have enough food. So therefore they started entering into villages and all that. So in order to put a break for that, the government had banned the collection of bamboo shoots. So therefore protecting the people as well as the wildlife. So that is how some rules and regulations can be followed, wherein fodder and water source can be increased within the forest area itself so that these wild animals don't enter into human settlements. So next is adoption of early warning systems, then creation of barriers, dedicated circle-wise control rooms with toll-free hotline numbers, identification of the hotspots, etc. One is adoption of early warning sites. Prior itself, if they come to know that a herd of animals, they have changed, for example, a herd of elephants have changed their direction and they are coming towards the village. So based on satellite imaging and all that, the people themselves can be warned, wherein they can use some methods to just allow the wild animals to flee from their particular area, or the people can leave that particular area for a duration of time and allow these animals to pass and then go back to their settlement. So all these, if early warning signs are given, then the chances of human wildlife conflict can be prevented. Next is to create barriers, like nowadays in the areas or human settlements which share boundaries with the forest, they have this electric fences and all that. So such barriers will also prevent the wildlife from entering into human settlements. And also proper control rooms should be set up wherever there is a human settlement. sharing its boundary with the forest, there proper control rooms with 24/7, that is phone facility, so that people immediately can call and alert the officials, so that the officials can come and whatever is needed to send back that animal to that particular habitat can be done, so that people will not have to directly intervene with those animals, so that human wildlife conflict can be prevented. So all these methods can also be adopted. Next is payment of a portion of ex gratia as interim relief within 24 hours of the incident to the victim family. Suppose a tiger or a cheetah kills a person. So within 24 hours, at least a certain amount should be, or compensation should be paid to the people of that particular family, so that they don't get agitated and they don't try to kill the animal, leading to further conflicts between humans and wildlife. So all these options can be followed, so that people will not have to take their own decisions and with haste they'll not go in for killing the wild animals, therefore preventing further human wildlife conflict. So these are the initiatives that are taken by the government of India. So this was about the session wherein the unit comes to an end. So in today's session we learnt about the nature reserves and some of the examples of nature reserves, and also we learnt about the tribal rights and also human wildlife conflict, with keeping India as an example. So with this the chapter comes to an end, or the unit comes to an end. So we shall meet again in the coming sessions with a new unit. Thank you.